Everybody enjoy the break? Everyone enjoy the... Welcome back if you're on the stream. Good to see you. How many folks were here last year and saw TikTok, presentation from TikTok? It's pretty awesome. Oh, I mean, that isn't for whoever's not from, but you're not from TikTok. If you remember, that was an awesome presentation about TikTok's deployment of FIDO and passkeys for consumers. This talk is about the enterprise deployment of FIDO2 for TikTok. So please help me to welcome Sydney Ng, who is TikTok's security engineer.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sydney. I'm from TikTok Security Engineering, and today we'll be talking about the pass keys to success of FIDO Enterprise Adoption. So we've been working really hard for the past year and a half on enterprise adoption at TikTok, and today I'm here to share that journey with you. We're going to be going over the goals that we've set for our enterprise realm, and then going over how we were able to meet those goals through two different iterations. First, through hardware security keys, and currently through our passkey rollout. Then we'll be giving you a sneak preview, here only, about some of the cool work that we're doing right now. So like all of you, our goal is to become a phishing-resistant company, meaning that we want to transition off of the traditional MFA methods, such as SMS, OTP, email codes. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we have a robust system for FIDO2 set up. We can't just transition right away like a snap, because that would be pulling out the rug from under all of our employees. They're used to all of these traditional MFA options. So if one day you log in and you have a new user experience of passkeys only, that would be a little bit jarring. So we need to make sure that when we onboard our employees, we're also bootstrapping them. So this second piece of the puzzle is quite complex and requires a lot of moving pieces, and this will be the main focus of our talk today. Afterwards, once we have all of these systems in place, then we're able to do that transition and cut over to FIDO2 only. And that's how we'll be meeting our end goal. So let's jump right into things. The first thing that we worked on was our hardware security key distribution, which was part of our initial FIDO2 pilot. In here, we wanted to first make sure that every single user, which are employees in the enterprise realm, had at least one way of logging in with FIDO2. And the best way to do this was through security keys. Because if we were to do it through passkeys first, this would be a little bit difficult, because assume you're a user and you go to IT to get a loaner laptop. Well, that loaner laptop doesn't have a passkey set up. But if you already had a security key, then that would solve the problem, because security keys are already a way to log in with FIDO2. After you register it to your account, you can use that in any device. Or let's take another example. Let's say you're a test engineer and you have 10 devices. Well, if you have a security key, you can plug it in, you can log in with FIDO2, then you can rinse and repeat again 10 times for all 10 devices, versus having to go in and set up a passkey multiple times. So in our first iteration, in order to make sure that every user was bootstrapped with FIDO2, we were doing this hardware key distribution. And so doing the distribution was a little bit difficult, but actually the more difficult part was how are we going to get users to adopt this? Because the process to bind the key to your account is actually not very intuitive. You can't just give the security key to an end user and then just say, please set it up. Because you have to know that you have to go into your settings, you have to click into the Authenticators tab, then you have to plug it in, then you have to set a PIN code, then you have to press the button, and then, and only then, can you start using it. So you can see here, in these photos, it's a very manual process that isn't the most intuitive for users. And anytime things get confusing, the process gets a little bit convoluted, you see users exiting the registration flow, and that's not what we want. So our goal is to simplify this process. And so last year at Authenticate, you probably saw us in the expo hall walking around talking to vendors, a lot of vendors, and by a lot, I really do mean a lot. This keychain here that our team created was mostly picked up from last year, and this is not part of the scavenger hunt, but if you want to guess how many keys are on here, come find me after the talk and guess, because I think you would be surprised as well how many can fit on this small keychain. And so it really does feel like a full circle moment as well here, because last year at this time, we were in the expo hall sharing our ideas and our hopes for the enterprise development for us, and just talking about ideas and trying to learn about all the different products out there. And it's really awesome that now this year, it has come full circle where we're able to stand on stage and talk about all of the developments and all of the hard work that we've done since that, to be able to bring that project into reality. And so from that experience last year, we ended up choosing a customized security key, which is in this photo right here. And you can see that it has a QR code. And so this QR code is connected to the serial number, which you can also see is on the left-hand side of that security key. And what that serial number is connected to is the set of FIDO2 credentials that are inside of the security key. And so all you really need to do is load those credentials into the FIDO2 database that our team hosts. So that way, when you're activating it, it is already ready to be used. So how are we going to get users to register it? Well, we created a self-registration app. And what that means is you can go in, so you can look at this right-hand side photo. You scan the QR code, because that QR code will tell us, oh, this is the serial number. And once the app knows what serial number that device is, we know what credentials are inside of that security key. And we also know which user it belongs to, because that user is using the application. So at the time of scanning the QR code, we know what credentials in the database we're going to activate. We know which user account we're going to tie it to. And so when we press that big blue submit button, that key is automatically ready to be used. And boom, just like that. It literally happens like that. You click submit, and then you can go into your Authenticators tab, and you can see that the key that you just pre-registered into your account can already start being used. The process before was a lot of steps, if you recall. There was the pin, there was the pressing, but you don't have to do any of that. This is a one-step process with the QR code scan that we built in-house, and it will automatically bind it to your account. So once we have a way to make sure that users are able to have security keys and also have a way to register it very efficiently, then we can go and safely transition to a FIDO2 only. We were able to deprecate all the other MFA options, as you can see in the photo on your left, and then for our pilot users, only allow them to go through FIDO2 for identity verification. And at the end of our first iteration, we were able to reach a really wide audience. Our pilot ended with over 900 individuals, over 3 departments. This equates to 35 offices over 16 countries. So this is really amazing that we were able, in a short amount of time, to iterate and bring security keys to a wide majority of our pilot groups. And then afterwards, we were collecting user feedback. And so when we're collecting user feedback, we found that users really don't mind the security key. It wasn't really impacting their day-to-day operations and not impeding on their workflows, which is the most important part. When they were using it, they were able to log in without any issues, so that way they could go through their everyday single sign-on workflows. However, we did see that majority of the people did set up platform authenticators instead. Think Touch ID, Face ID, And not many people were actually using the security key, and they were using it more as a backup key, which is totally fine because the point of this iteration was to make sure that every user had one way at least to log in with FIDO2. So as long as they had this requirement satisfied, it didn't really matter how they achieved it. So whether they used it as their main form of authentication or whether they used it as a backup key, that was totally fine. And we did get some feedback as well on things that we could improve on. So for example, the security key was a little bit bulky. Users wanted it to be a little bit more slim. Also, there weren't really incentives for users to come to the IT service desk to pick it up. So we found that a lot of people needed a lot of encouragement to come get their key. And this could be partially because it's very difficult for people who are not in the FIDO2 space like us to understand the correlation between a security key and how this relates to FIDO and how this relates to their login. So the connection wasn't very clear, which can also be why we saw the pickup rate was a little bit difficult to achieve. And so leaning into this feedback, we really saw that a lot of people were using their passkeys, their Face ID, their Touch ID, things that were already built into the devices that they already had. So we really wanted to lean into this and see how we could leverage this to be more successful. And that led us to our second iteration of a passkey upsell. And this is currently what we're finishing up right now. So we still want to make sure that every user has minimally one way to log in with FIDO2. But if we're not distributing security keys, how are we going to do this? Well, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. We wanted to make sure that users were setting up their passkeys through our passkey upsell campaign. And how that works is that you can see here is that after you log in, we're showing you an educational page that kind of lays the foundation of what FIDO2 is, what's going to be happening when you do a registration. Because remember, some of the feedback that we were receiving was there was a disconnect on how credentials relate to what they're doing. So we found that it's really important to educate users on what's happening under the hood and involve them in the process so that way they have full transparency in what's happening to their account. So afterwards, we'll lead them to set up their authenticator. And then afterwards, when they have their platform authenticator set up, then we're able to know that we have that user covered on this device. Then the next question is, how are we going to increase adoption and usage? Because once you have a passkey set up just like that, after you went through our upsell campaign, how do we encourage you to use it? And so what we did was we put a FIDO2 logo on the main login page as the first option. And we encourage users to use it because we offer it as a one-step login process. Traditionally, you need to go through a 2FA, two-step verification, through password and email OTP or password and SMS. Or there are many ways that required lots of waiting, and we wanted to show users, hey, once you set up your passkey, it's really simple, it's really straightforward, and you're going to want to continue to use this. So by showing them this and showing them how easy it was to use their passkey to log in, we were hoping to drive adoption and usage. And then when we decide to make the cutover to enforcement and require FIDO2 at login, we have the confidence to do this because we know that users are aware of what FIDO2 passkeys are. We know that they are familiar with the process, and we know that they've used this time and time again. So it's not going to be such a jarring process when we make that cutover. And we've recently just finished our iteration 2 pilot, and it was a success. We were able to reach 1,500 users in our second pilot, and in our first iteration, we only reached 900. And so we were able to almost double it, and that was because we're leveraging infrastructure that already exists. Users have phones. Employees are already given corporate laptops. So we don't need to distribute anything new. We're using things that already exist and incorporating it into our internal systems. And we can see that the upsell campaign really worked because there was an 11% increase in the number of logins with FIDO2. And overall, the time that it took to log in decreased by 87%. And that's because we see a lot of people switching over to FIDO2. So the numbers really just show for themselves how our increase in registration that went up by 15% really did go a long way. And so now for the sneak peek, this is what we're currently working on. So with the success of iteration 2, we're continuing the momentum, and by the end of this calendar year, we're going to be rolling out our upsell campaign, the user experience that you just saw in the 3 steps behind me, to everyone within the company by the end of 2024 at TikTok. So in just a few months, everyone's going to be seeing what you just got a sneak preview of. Secondly, it's really important that we create a really robust recovery flow because we want to make sure that we're not locking users out of their account. So this comes in 3 different steps. Number 1, we need to make sure that we're identifying what conditions must be met to enter the recovery flow. So that way we are creating a user experience that is tailored to the users when they are not able to get into their account. Whether this be because their platform authenticator is broken or because they just don't know how to log in. There could be a variety of reasons, so we need to make sure that this is a very tailored experience. Secondly, we want to make sure that we're getting users back into their account as fast as possible. So whether this is through a self-verification method or leveraging single sign-on, our SSO team's on-call platform to do an identity verification, we're putting systems in place to make sure that before we let you in, you are who you say you are. Then afterwards, we'll let you into your account in step 3, but not without first making sure that we show you the upsell campaign. So that way you can create a passkey, so that way the next time you log in, you're not going to be locked out and having to go through the recovery flow again. Lastly, we're working on some very detailed progress tracking. And it's really important that we're able to track departments based on region, based on which department they are in. So that way we have a very detailed picture of maybe this department needs a little bit more love. We're not seeing adoption so high. And we can work with those departments on creating strategies on how we want to upsell their passkeys. So that way we can get them to also increase usage and adoption rate. Secondly, we're working on developing APIs and internal systems that will give us the live FIDO2 status for users. And this is really important because, for example, when you're on call and a user comes to you saying, hey, I can't get into my account, we can see that like, oh, this user has actually not set up any passkeys, or this user has only set up a security key, and that person doesn't have their security key on them. We're able to create a very tailored experience based on the information that we know about a user's FIDO2 status. And lastly, we're going to be able to create all of this to make a better rollout and a better roadmap, so that way when we do decide to go to enforcement, we are able to create a very robust and a very holistic approach for the enterprise realm. And also, we're able to come to conferences and share all of our learnings with everyone else who is fighting the good fight, like all of you, to bring FIDO2 in the enterprise realm to the limelight. So, thank you for joining this TikTok and learning more about how we were able to bring FIDO2 to our enterprise realm. Thank you. And before everyone leaves, please stay seated because some of you may know that I am very competitive in the scavenger hunt and I need a selfie with everybody. So if everyone could just smile, that would be super awesome. Okay, so on the count of 3, everyone say passkeys, okay? 1, 2, 3, passkeys. Okay, I think one of those will definitely work.